sir. Hope you're well.
Ano bang tingin mo din dun sa naging TRICOM hearing nung nakaraang linggo na umamin yung ilang mga vloggers na nag-spread nga sila ng disinformation. Yung dating ang head ng PCOO ay umamin na tinrain daw sila ng China. No? Anong tingin mo ron, Dean?
Well, they should be held accountable. Sa tingin ko, hindi kailangan ng bagong batas, no? Para i-hold sila accountable. Ang daming batas na pwede nang gamitin, both criminal, but for those naman na affected by, di ba, yung ganitong, I don't want to call it fake news kasi hindi naman siya news, di ba? By this type of reports and post fictitious, diba? Post and report. Meron din silang nakita namin ang pinaka-effective are civil cases, filing civil cases. Kasi this is about money, no? Alam mo, hindi ito about pro Duterte ba sila, pakamatay ba sila para kay Duterte. Pera ito, di ba? Namamonetize kasi nila lahat ng posts nila, di ba? Lalong ngayon na hindi lang nababayaran sila, but every time dumadami yung kanilang audience, may mga advertisement sila, mga ganyan. So you have to hit them where it hurts them the most, di ba? Which is with their pockets. Kaya ako hindi ako favor ng bagong batas that will define fake news kasi alam naman natin madaling i-turn around yan against the legitimate press, di ba? And against freedom of speech. But yung sa mga ay namin nila, ang daming nakikita ko pwedeng i-charge sa kanila na already existing laws, no? Doesn't even have to be libel.
There's Article 154, the Revised Penal Code.
Yes, lahat ng daming pwedeng options. And for the government people, of course, may iba pang options doon, no?
Yeah.
So, I think yun ang kailangan natin i-track. The hearings are important kasi, di ba, yung nalalabas natin lahat ng nangyayari. But I think ang next action should not necessarily be a law, but should be prosecution and running after. And particularly, as I said, importante na na we go after the business, di ba?
Yeah.
Including by the way, importante to go after the platforms. And YouTube, Google,
Yes.
lahat yan sila kasi kaya ito na-proliferate, di ba? Dahil pinapayagan. Kahit na pinapa-pull down mo, the harm is already done, di ba? Lalo na kung vlogger has millions of followers.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
The harm is already done. So, yun din, pwedeng pwedeng marami din tayong options on how to go after the platforms. Tinatawag natin big tech, no?
Yeah.
Na yung mayaman sa misery natin, di ba? Sa nangyayaring ganitong klaseng disinformation na lumalabas.
Dean Tony, that's actually what I was going to point out. Lahat ng laws that you mentioned puts the burden on the user, right? It's on you if you share fake news. It's on you if you libel someone, cyber libel someone. Pero so far, there is no law that puts the burden on the social media platforms. And I think it's not clear yet what the House hearing is trying to get at. Pero isn't that what we need at this point? A law that holds liable the social media platforms, also forces them to, be more accountable and be more transparent in their moderation, for instance.
Yes, definitely may gap sa batas tungkol dyan, there's a gap in the law there. So that maybe is actually a good way of just stopping this, di ba? Once and for all. It's very scary, ha? Alam nyo, tinatanong ko anong ginagawa ko. Busy ako sa on the ground na work against disinformation. Alam nyo, sa traditional media or sa institutional media, among the lawyers, di ba? Academe, malinaw naman kung anong katotohanan. But on the ground, nananalo ang Duterte forces, di ba? In terms of portraying this as a victimhood, yung lahat ng kanilang they really are winning kasi natuto lang mas magaling sa vlogging, sa TikTok, sa, di ba, yung ganon. And of course, other people, like, halimbawa, mga human rights lawyers, sa human rights, we're busy with other things, di ba? Those mga mass movements, mga political parties, busy with the elections. So basically, on the ground, itong mga disinformation peddlers, di ba, are the ones, the terrain is all theirs. Kaya challenge namin sila, kami, we're coming up with something that challenge namin on the ground, yung kasi yung, kami naman, we're not political, di ba? We're not even a human rights organization. We're an anti-disinformation organization. Focus na kami talaga doon, di ba? But we see what's happening on the ground is actually scary kasi lahat yan, di ba, may Ronald dito, may electoral consequences yan in 2025 and especially in 2028, di ba? We really have to up our sa ilalim, sa ground.
Hindi na itong all the debates about disinformation, they revolve around freedom of expression eh. Meron sinabi si Juan Ponce Enrile, I hate to quote him about when it comes to human rights, pero sabi niya, freedom of expression is underpinned by truth. Truth underpins freedom of information, freedom of expression. Anong masasabi mo doon?
Totoo naman yun, di ba? Na you can't have freedom of speech, freedom of expression unless you have access to information. Diba? How can you have ang problema natin is we also have access, universal access now to disinformation. So yun ang kailangan natin i-plug, no? I mean, and diba, ang traditional kami sa mga professors sa constitutional law, ang traditional response namin, diba, is if there's bad information, ang sagot niyan, good information. If there's bad views, ang sagot niyan, better views, diba? Parang nagde-debate tayo sa market. But nagbago na yung situation na social media has changed the situation so much, di ba? Na baka yung old paradigm namin na good, lalo ba ngayon, di ba? I mean, ako wala akong masasabi sa ginagawa niyo, Ami, sa ginagawa niyo, Ed, sa ginagawa ng Rappler at lahat, di ba, ng institutional media. You're doing a really good job, di ba? But you're not hitting the right audience, eh. Di ba? Na on the ground audience. Na dati mas radio ang but even now hindi na yung radio, di ba? Podcast, videocast, di ba? Lahat yan na
TikTok.
wala tayo sa terrain yun eh.
Nabalitaan ko nga din.
In that terrain.
Nabalitaan ko nga din, may isang bubuit na nagsabi sa akin, may nagpaabot na unofficially sa TikTok ng reklamo. At kung hindi sila mag-aayos, ay gagawing official yung reklamo. Dahil nga, medyo malinaw naman ngayon sino nagdo-dominate ng TikTok since last October. At saka malinaw din kung sino may-ari ng TikTok. Kaya mukhang merong magiging offensive against TikTok in the next few weeks. Ang hinihingi ba ng inyong organization, Dean, ay greater regulation dito sa mga social media platforms na ito? Paano sa US kasi medyo nagbabago yung climate eh. Parang in the name of freedom of expression,
Bumaliktad.
Talagang wina-wipe out yung regulatory functions ng gobyerno, yung mga fact-checkers, no? At ano bang advocacy nyo para dito sa problemang ito?
Ang term na ginagamit namin, Ronald, is hindi regulation, but accountability. Di ba? If they post something, if they allow something to be posted that is harmful, di ba? They should be held to account for that, di ba? Iba-ibang level ng pag-account, pwedeng i-close down sila kung persistent, di ba? Kung persistent sila. We hesitate to do that kasi alam mo naman, yung lahat yan, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, hindi naman lahat yan politika, di ba? Marami dyan negosyo, marami dyan personal, di ba? So, it can be also, di ba, harmful to a lot of people if you suddenly close down kung saan sila nag-advertise ng kanilang mga products, di ba? Saan sila nagbebenta, saan sila nagre-reunion sa pamilya at sa mga kaklase. But, pwede rin kung at certain point, the harm in society is so big already na yun ang pinakagrabe, we close them down, di ba? So like sa TikTok, kung meron yung national security issue na yun, di ba? then pwede siyang i-close down. No? I'm not gonna necessarily advocate that now, pero yun ang range mo from close down to civil liability for those who have been hurt, di ba? Kami, we're very proud na si Atty. Maraulio, we were able to secure, di ba, an important judgment from him na talagang ang result nun, nagtatakbuhan na yung mga red taggers, di ba? Nagtatago na at umaalis na ng bansa sa totoo lang, di ba? Because they know we're coming after them and others are coming after them. Ngayon, maraming mga media actually lumalapit sa amin and we said yes, pag media, we will do that for media kasi strategic. We will not just do that for any individual na inaatake kasi, di ba, dami-dami nun eh. But for media particularly, we will do that. For political figures like Laila de Lima, we also did that kasi napaka-strategic yun na to stop the disinformation.
Dean, let me ask you naman
Dean,
about
speaking of accountability,
your point of
kasi yung
view.
depensa nung nakikinig ako nung, ang basa ko lang hindi naman sila actually nag-admit to disinformation per se, pero sinabi lang nila na meron silang maling information pero hindi daw malicious yung posting nila, hindi daw willfully, tapos sabi nila nilagay naman yung allegedly, di ba, yung daw. What do you think of that defense?
Alam mo, na-confuse sila between freedom of expression and speech and freedom of the press. Kayo, Ami, pwede niyong excuse yun na nagkamali kayo. Di ba? Ang Philippine Star, Inquirer, Rappler, Channel 5, Channel, di ba, yung One News, lahat kayo, pwede kayong magsabi na na nagkamali kami, mag-eratong kayo kasi may editorial content kayo, di ba? Meron kayong monitoring, meron kayong fact-checking, di ba? So pwede nyo sabihin yon. Po sila, hindi na pwede sabihin yon. Kasi hindi naman sila journalist. Dito ang distinction, di ba? Between a journalist and a vlogger, an ordinary person that posts, di ba? Because the only thing that they can claim is that they have not harmed people. Yun ang defense nila. But alam natin, they harm people with this kind of disinformation. They harm society with this kind of disinformation. So, completely wrong defense yun sa kanila. Obviously, hindi nila nakuha yung memo ng lawyer nila na hindi sila journalist, di ba? And therefore, absence of malice is irrelevant. Di ba? To someone who attacks people like that or gives disinformation like that.
One of
Dean, let
them
me
was
ask
a
you about
journalist.
the other side of the fence naman. Of course, we all are against the spread of disinformation. Pero how do you view how congressmen treated that particular hearing? Specifically, how they treated
The pro-Duterte bloggers.
I asked that kasi, yes, we don't like misinformation and it should be called out. But to the extent ba na you will threaten them with contempt unless they apologize in public? I mean, I suppose on one hand, we should push back, but on the other hand, do we push back to that? To that extent that you threaten them with jail time?
Yeah, I mean, always naman, even in a congressional hearing, may just due process, di ba? At may respect for rights. So, to the extent na na-violate yung rights nila, I will side with them. But I actually don't think na-violate yung rights nila, di ba? Because precisely, they were not telling the truth. Iba yon if an journalist is telling the truth or is withholding the truth because of journalistic principles, diba? Like you cannot disclose your sources. Iba yon, diba? But to outright lie to Congress, diba, is not really appropriate. You deserve to be treated that way if you lie to Congress that way, diba? Yun ang aking
Yes,
doon, yun
yes,
ang aking
Dean.
parang what was done to Duterte yung day na inarrest siya. He was given all his rights, respected all his rights, diba? But they abuse it, diba? Kaya in the end, hinandcuff yung lawyer niya, and he was threatened na i-body carry kita kung gagawin mo pa yun. Because you cannot abuse your rights also when the public interest is involved.
Yes, sir. Pero sir, to the extent nga na, MJ Kiambao Reyes was threatened with the contempt unless she apologized in public. And also, tinawag siyang, well, I don't know if I can say it here, TANGA, harapan.
It's not a cuss word.
Oo,
Tama, yeah.
well, it's not a cuss word.
It's not a cuss word.
Yung mga ganun, inappropriate talaga yun, di ba? I mean, nakasulat na ako dito, marami naman talaga nangyari sa Quadcom, sa yung iba-ibang mga hearing sa House of Representatives. Medyo inappropriate yung language minsan ng di ba? Ng mga congressman. So, ano naman yun?
Yes, sir.
Considered naman yung gano'n na hindi mo siya pwede. Hindi mo
Yes,
dapat
sir. Sir.
hindi mo i-date, di ba?
Yes, sir. Sir,
But
what-
if you lie to Congress, you should be called out.
Yes, sir. Sir, one more thing, sir. We talked to a reporter who was covering there last week. Ang sabi niya kasi we asked him, ano bang gusto ng Congress mangyari dito sa hearing na to? What do they want to come up with? I suppose legislation of some sort. Ang sabi sa amin ng reporter namin, some sort of a legal framework and possibly then a code of conduct. I don't know governing what, social media behavior ba or that or anything like that. I mean, is that something for government to draw up a code of conduct for social media? Wouldn't that be worrisome in any way?
Yeah, kaya nga I'm not in favor except yung yung sinabi kanina laws for social media platforms.
The platforms, yeah.
I'm not in favor of any kind of government intervention, definition, legislative definition ng fake news or ng ganon. Kasi nga, magiging affected tayo lahat yan eventually.
Yeah.
Diba? Ngayon silang, and maybe we cheer that, but eventually all of us will be affected. So of course, it would help social media practitioners if they come up with their own code, di ba? Di ba ganun sa press, di ba? Sa print media, I have been a member yung Philippine Press Council, di ba? Yung right to reply, di ba? So self-regulation yon yung right to reply. Kaya rightly so, nung pinipush ni Senator Pimentel at yun, Aquilino Pimentel yung
Yes,
right
sir.
to reply bill, nag-resist tayo, di ba,
Yes,
sa
sir.
media. Hindi kasi kailangan, kasi meron na tayong regulatory self-regulation sa right to reply, and I was a chair of that and member of that with different editors, di ba? And we handled some of the cases there na when people complained, di ba, na they were not given the chance to give their side.
Yeah.
So importante din self-regulation, including by social media practitioners,
Well,
but not by the government.
To that end, how effective would a self-regulating body be? Kasi the example they kept bringing up was KBP, Kapsanan ng mga Broadcaster ng Pilipinas, which is a self-regulating industry body for broadcasters like us. Pero the membership is by organization, right? So if they were to create a digital, what did they call it? Content Creators Council ba yun? If-
Everybody.
That's a mouthful.
Oo nga eh. How would it work and who should be on it, right? Because this presumably would be the council to decide how everyone behaves on social media. Medyo parang malawak yung ano.
Well, it will be individuals, diba? Kasi yun naman yung business model dito. Individuals who voluntarily participate. You cannot force people to participate, but it can be an industry standard, diba? Again, i-repeat ko, this is about business. Pera ito, lots of money are involved. So, ang regulation dito dapat directed, follow where the money is, diba? Including sa elections, related na campaign finance, diba? Follow where the money is. And regulate there in that part of the business, diba? Or of what they do.
Pero di ba
Pero
konektado
if
dito
you start
sa
regulating the
sinasabi yung
business,
follow the
saka
money?
monetization, can you also regulate the content? Kasi parang sa ano yan halimbawa sa TV, may mga guidelines actually on TV for content na wala sa amin sa print.
Yeah.
Dahil iba yung medium
Yes,
You're
sir.
saying na pwede yun, ganon.
Yeah, it's self-regulation, diba? They develop that themselves, diba? Yung mga But here's where again another point.
It's more also, it's actually more than self-regulation sa TV Pwede silang tanggalan actually ng franchise. If they violate those rules sa franchise, meron silang specific rules sa TV na hindi ka pwedeng maglabas na, halimbawa obscenity, medyo mahigpit sila.
Sorry.
Ganon.
Ami, sorry, I think we lost Dean Tony.
Nasa ano pa siya?
Dyan.
Yeah, nasa ano pa siya?
I'm back here.
Okay.
Yeah, nawala lang siya. So ganun ba? Pwede ba yon? Can you go into content while regulating the business?
The content regulation, di ba? Di ba may difference sa freedom of speech? You can regulate what's called content neutral aspects of the business. But you cannot, or you have very strict scrutiny for content-based regulation, di ba? Bawal yon as a general rule, di ba? You cannot tell a person what to speak. You can tell a person how to speak, how to post, where to post. Pwede yun. Yun ang tinatawag na content-neutral regulation. So the business, di ba, is still content-neutral. But yung content-based, talagang ano yun. But here again is another point I want to make, and hindi ko pang ginagawa, di ba, na more of us must go into that business, di ba? Of social media practitioners that are more, di ba, I don't know how to do it. I don't sabihin na mas mabait, mas magaling, mas nationalistic, di ba? But more people should go into it with a public interest view in mind, di ba? Because otherwise, talagang the business will be full of people who are there for the money.
Yeah. Ron?
Dean, merong binuksan itong TRICOM hearing na ito eh. Partly in relation dun sa sinasabi nyo kanina na follow the money, na hindi kayang gawin ng simpleng self-regulation, the national security issue. Halimbawa, no less than the former head of the PCOO, inner core ng Malacanang, ay umamin na sila ay tinetrain ng isang foreign country, a superpower at that, na ino-occupy yung part ng ating territory, how to be bloggers. Diba, hindi to simpleng freedom of the press, hindi to simpleng regulation, self-regulation. Ito ay nasa borderline ng ng treason eh. No? Kung yung mismong high-ranking official, or at least former high-ranking official, ay inaamin that they are being trained by a foreign power, China at that. Na at this point, wala lang tayong tension, ino-occupy part of our territory. So, anong kwan dyan? Anong kinakailangan mo dyang regulation?
Ronald, very clear naman. Where there's a clear and present danger to society, pwede talaga siyang i-regulate. Pwede siyang i-censor for that matter. Diba? So, that's not what I'm talking about. If in fact, diba, may legitimate national, again, importante legitimate national security. Kasi some red taggers, the government people, sasabihin nila, they're doing this kasi anti-terrorist sila, diba, against terrorism, etc., etc. So, we have to watch out for that also. Kasi, diba, yung terrorist activism is not terrorism. We said that, the Supreme Court sided with us on that, pero ginagamit pa rin nila, diba? So, we just have to be careful lang na highest standards ang required pag erase natin yung clear and present danger.
Okay.
So, the government can close down a newspaper, a TV station, diba, a person's blog. If that person, that newspaper, that is creating a clear and present danger. That's really the only standard we follow in the Philippines, which is a very strict standard. Diba?
Yeah.
Hindi yan basta-basta ang ginagamit lang. In fact, wala pang newspaper sa Pilipinas na na-close down because of that standard. Every time may attempt, sinasabi ng Supreme Court, hindi. Diba? Hindi siya nag-rise up to clear danger. But sa national security, gera, China, treason, that will rise up to it, diba? If you're able to show na in fact may clear and present danger.
Okay, we'll leave that there for now. Thank you so
sir.
much.
Dean Tony Labiña.
Thank you, Dean.
Salamat, Dean.